This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. 3, 2, 1, and welcome everybody to this episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. I am your host, John Allen, on this early morning conversation with my friend and brother, Les. How you doing, man?
Hey, brother, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. You know, you used a term that I think fits our relationship. You called us spirit brothers.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that fits.
Man.
I think that fits. You and I have a lot in common.
Oh man, it's amazing how you're halfway across the world, and but our umbilical cord is maybe 2 or 3 feet between us. Right. So I knew that from the moment we started talking. Yeah. I felt the connection right away. So yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable talking to you about anything. So let's just get into a conversation. Let's see if we can have a conversation that kind of cements our first intuition that we have this natural brotherly combination, because we have so many things in common, you and I. We'll get into that. Maybe this will come out in the conversation. But one thing that I'm real interested in with you is your educational background. If I understand correctly, you got your degree, or you did the bulk or quite a bit of your college education later on in years. You weren't the typical 18-year-old who went off straight to college. Right. Can you talk about that? Initially, I left the military at the age of 20. Okay, and I started the following fall semester at Kent State University.
Which branch of the military?
I was in the Army.
In the Army, yeah. And
once I ETS'd or got out the Army, I began the following fall at Kent State University. Didn't have any discipline or real structure in my life or any examples to follow or even a support network. So I ended up basically bombing out with a 1.97 GPA in 1990. And from there, I joined the police department here in Akron, Ohio, where I worked for 15 years. And I got hurt on duty. And after I left the department, I said to myself, you know what? That 1.97 GPA I left Kent State with, you may as well stamp that on my forehead for the 15 years while I was a police officer, because it always bothered me. And I always told myself, if I had a chance to go back and make things right, I'm going to do it.
So you looked at that GPA as a failed accomplishment, something that you wanted to better.
Definitely. It was horrible. It was horrible. And so once I started back in 2007, I had a new frame of mind. I had a different frame of mind, and I just say, now is my time. It's my time to go back, correct the wrong, and finish my degree. Initially, I wanted to finish with a bachelor's degree, but I had a talk with my aunt, and I said, you know what, in the long term, I would like to get a doctorate degree. And my self-esteem, based on that 1.97, it wasn't quite where it should have been at, because I had fears. But I just sat down with my aunt, and she basically told me, you have doctors and lawyers in your family. If they did it, you can do it. Okay. Her name is Ina Browner. And because of that, that was like a catalyst. And I see. What happened was, it just really fortified my enthusiasm. What I did was I started from the basics. I got a GED study guide, because I had been out of school for 20 years.
Yeah, GED study. That whole thing about being out of schooling for so long. Right. Was that a struggle that you had to go through? Because I can put myself in the same situation. See, here we go already. I'm feeling that we have so much in common. I went away to college on a football scholarship, first in my family to go to a university. So there's a lot of pride there. Wow. So you can imagine the disappointment in myself when I quit. I gave up that scholarship and didn't finish. But then any thoughts of going back seem so distant to me, because I've been out of that university environment for so long. So after so many years away from a university education, was it a challenge for you to get back into it?
Well, you know what? You have to put all your stop all your pride and your ego and leave it outside the front door. And you have to really commit to yourself. You know what? I'm going to start from the beginning. So I got a GED study guide, and I basically studied it from front to back.
Okay.
Front to back. I learned math all over again. I learned English all over again.
So you did this on your own. This was not in a classroom. You did this. Okay. Yeah. And how long did you do this self-study?
I barricaded myself in my house for about 2 months.
2 months.
Yes. And I followed everything. And if I didn't know something, I would go to the library and get a book. And basically, just because the internet wasn't really what it is today, so you couldn't rely on videos and things like that.
This was back in the library days. No internet, no Google. Library.
Exactly. So I got I had probably 10 or 11 books that I would reference if I had issues with anything. Okay. I studied them, and I became proficient. A lot of it was memory. Oh, okay. But sometimes, when you're younger, I can't make sense of this. But after you go through different things in life and you learn about progression, systems, and you expand your worldview, things tend to make more sense.
Amen to that. Okay? Absolutely.
And then you say to yourself, I could have got this before, man. Yeah. If I had just blocked out all the external stimuli, all the partying and distractions and things like that, I could have done it before. Yeah. But I'm a firm believer in divine time, that when you do something and you accomplish this on your time, not the next person's. So I became very proficient at the basics, and a lot of things in college are just recycle basic theories and concepts and whatnot, and you have to apply them to different circumstances. So I asked to get into the program, and I scored in the high 90s on that test, a proficiency test. I didn't pursue the nursing degree because the school was not accredited. They got their accreditation about a year after I left.
Okay, so nursing was originally what you wanted to focus on.
Yeah, it was what I really wanted to focus on. I was going to go back to Kent State for graduate school for nursing, but it didn't work out that way. So once I left that program, that nursing school, I went back to Kent State. Okay, so I got a chance to, get that GPA together. And when I went back to Kent State, I had about 32 credit hours I had to finish, which is roughly a semester or a semester and the summer, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. So in 1 year, I had scored straight A's in all of my courses, 1B. But what happened was I made the president's list. Yes. I made the dean's list. And at the end of that year, I just had 1 credit hour to finish. Yeah. So I had 32 credit hours initially, 1 credit hour to finish, and I turned that 1.9 GPA to a 3.08. That's amazing. And how old were you when you were going through that year? Oh, this was in 2000. I think I was 43. 43. Okay. When I went back. Wow. I'm 55 now. Okay. Yeah, I may not look like it, but hey, man, this I don't know. There's another thing we have in common. We both look like we're about 21, 22. Oh, bro, there you go. And we both have the heads, man. There you go. So. I got a compliment on my head. I had a guest on, Miss England Brooks. Wonderful black lady who lives here in Norway, Black American, originally from Compton, but she lives here in Norway. Oh, really? I did an episode with her, and she said I have the most beautifully shaped head. I've never had that compliment before. So shout out to Miss England, who is in love with the shape of my head. So there you go, brother. Yeah, even though you're married, there's compliments, man. Hey, it's a compliment. I can't help it. Right. And Miss England can't help it. She's just telling the truth. So there's nothing for my wife. My wife can't get jealous of the truth now. No, not at all. I'm sure she appreciates it. You appreciate it. So, I mean, hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, so you're 43 years old, back to college. You turn that 1.9 GPA into what'd you say, a 3.8? 8. Yeah, and that's amazing. Yeah. How hard was that? Hard. How hard? Well, okay, you put in the time, you put in the work, but was it? Did it go easy? Did it go smooth, or was there a struggle involved? I look at it like this: you start on top. everybody starts out with a 4.0. What
Right.
you do in between the beginning and end of that school year determines whether you can maintain it. So I looked at it like, hey, I got a 4.0, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to maintain that. So I studied, man. I mean, I ate, slept, and breathed academics.
That's a great way of looking at it. You start out with the 4.0 and you do what
Right.
has to be done to maintain that. That's a good
Right.
way of looking at it.
Exactly. I'm always
You start off winning. You start off winning
exactly.
already. Yeah.
I'm a glass half full kind of person instead of a glass half empty.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to do whatever it takes to complete that glass, to make it full instead of being half full. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Were there any challenges in molding together your academic life with your work life at that time?
Well, at that time, I had left the police department on a disability. I got hurt.
Okay, so this was after. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
You were done.
Yes,
okay.
This was after. And
how many years? How many years were you an officer?
I was 15 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any frustrations there with having to give up that line of work?
I hated it.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I never liked it. You know, we would have alarm calls in Fairlawn Heights. You know where Fairlawn Heights is. The big, beautiful houses, $300,000, $400,000 houses. And not that materialism means everything, but I always admired accomplishments.
Right.
You know, what does it take for you to get from point A to point B?
Right.
Not that, money means everything. It's just that what sacrifices did you have to make? Like I asked you about Norway. We spoke about that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I always admired your bravery, because to me, it takes a lot of bravery to uproot, leave your country, your safe zone, to go to another country where you don't know anything.
Well, I tell you, that was bravery is a word that really fits in that situation, because it was an extremely uncertain period in my life. And it was a period where I really leaned on my wife. I mean, Snoopy, right there will tell you how much trust I put in Snoopy, my wife. I call her Snoopy.
Right. That's okay. Yeah, I understand.
That right there shows you how much trust I put into her, because I literally dropped everything. We were married for about 18 months at that time. We had been together for a little over 2 years at that time.
Right.
And I just put all my trust in her, dropped everything, and came here. So it's talking about what it took to get where I am now. That first step, actually moving here, was the most difficult part of it.
That is incredible. I'm in awe of your journey to get there. You know, I'm open to doing that, like we discussed before, but I want to go where I don't pay a lot of money for taxes and things like that. You know, with the current political environment and racial environment in America, I'm tired, man.
I believe it. I'm not even there, and I'm tired. You know, just to walk down this path for a second. You know, thinking about taxes. People talk about how the Scandinavian countries, Norway in particular, are places where citizens have to pay high taxes. Yeah, we pay high taxes, but I can tell you this, very quickly after coming here and starting working, that feeling of being overtaxed left. And you don't even feel, there's no adjustment to make. It is what it is. And then reciprocally, we feel our taxes being spent. We know where it's going. There's very little corruption when it comes to budgeting on a national level. We know where our money is going, and we're getting our value back. Right.
How long you been there now?
Man, I've been here since the 5th of June, 2002.
Wow.
Coming up on 19 years this coming June in 2021.
Man.
So I don't feel that we're taxed more than we should be. We're taxed a lot, but we also get a lot back. You know, free health care. I was able to keep my job and take a year of leave when our daughter was born. I stayed at home with our daughter for a year and still got paid, still had my job. Wow. I mean, I'll pay a little extra taxes. Incredible. Yeah, I'll pay a little extra taxes to be able to do that. Wow. So, and that's nothing unusual. That's normal. That's normal to get.
See, in some of my business classes, we studied work-life environments in different countries, and Norway was at the top of the list. for having an incredible work-life balance.
There is a lot of truth in that. It's very rare to come across someone here in Norway who is complaining about their job. People are very satisfied with their job. They're satisfied with their pay. They're satisfied with the amount of time off they get. 5 weeks of vacation, 5 weeks of vacation every year. Hello. All of this supported time off for sickness or the birth of a child, things like it's incredible.
What about childcare? Things like that, like daycare, childcare.
I looked at it. Here you go. Now, Norway is taxed higher, much higher than you're taxed in the United States. But childcare is, I believe, 30% cheaper here in Norway than it is in the States.
Yeah, I heard that. I read about that.
So, again, I don't have a problem paying these high taxes because we get it back.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. But, we'll talk more about that offline. I now you got me thinking again, man.
Welcome to Norway.
I know, right?
But let me go back to your story, to your timeline here. Okay, now you had been a police officer for 15 years, Akron PD, and then you go back to school. You've pulled your grades up 3.8. You finished that last credit hour. And what do you have your degree in then at that point?
My bachelor's degree is in general studies.
Okay. And then what do? You get that degree and what do you start doing?
Well, the funny thing is when I was at graduation, I was talking to another guy who was sitting next to me, a young kid, man, and he was telling me that, I got to start law school in 3 weeks. And I was laughing. I was like, oh, man, you don't get a break, blah, 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 blah. It was so funny. But then when I got out, I wanted to go into an MBA program. And when I applied, I got accepted. And classes started in a month. I thought I would at least have, 3 or 4 months off.
Right.
I graduated in July and classes started in August. So I'm thinking, man, oh God.
you don't even get a chance to breathe, man.
Right. But see, I'm never one to turn down an opportunity. So they said, look, you can either start in September or start in December. I said, no, I'm not going to do that because they were on quarters.
Okay.
So I had to start in August, late August, I mean. So I started in August and I finished my master's of business in 2013. I got an MBA in healthcare information, which is almost like a dual major because you get the business and then you get the healthcare information focus. So it was almost like a dual major.
Healthcare information or healthcare administration?
Information.
Information. Okay.
Yes, information.
In practical terms, what is that degree? What can you use that degree to do?
It's just like administration.
Okay.
It's leadership from a business perspective, dealing with coded language, that kind of information systems. That kind of thing. But it's just like administration. It's a leadership position.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was at Kent State too, right? All of this.
No, that was at Tiffin University.
Tiffin, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just writing some notes here, so I make sure I get
That's okay.
Want to make sure I get your biography right when I post this.
That's fine.
When I post this episode.
Fine.
Okay, so master's in healthcare information, and at that point, how old are you?
Probably 45 or 44.
So at the age of 44, 45, you're in a position that most people are around maybe 24, 25. Right. Did you?
As you get older, your colleagues in class, they get older too, because a lot of people are returning because they worked in careers and they want promotions and things like that.
Okay.
I was never the oldest person in class.
Ah, okay. That's an eye opener. Okay.
Right. I was, with people who were my age, and some were a couple of years younger or whatnot, but the demographic was roughly similar to my age, maybe a few years difference.
Interesting.
Right.
I never would have thought.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm looking at it from a Norwegian perspective, because here people have a tendency to, they finish high school, they go right into college, they get that bachelor's, and then they go right into the master's, so that they're done. They're done with all of that by the time they're 24, 25. That's a Norwegian thing, though.
And another thing that separated me from younger people is that this was a learning platform where I went to school.
This was a what?
Learning.
Online. Okay.
Yes. So the working population that would go to school and fit their classes within their work schedule. So that was another thing that kind of raised the age and level up, because you had a returning demographic that worked full time with families and so forth.
Right. I think probably the biggest deterrent to me through these years, going back and getting and furthering my education, is the idea of sitting in a classroom, listening to lectures and whatnot. That just doesn't appeal to me. But on the other side, doing things online with a quality online education,
right?
With the proper support and proper follow-up and whatnot. That online thing is actually very appealing to me. That I could do. Yeah.
It's exciting because your motivation comes from within. You're older, you're experienced, and you're determined. So motivation was never a problem for me.
So you had that focus all along.
Oh yeah. Relentless.
You never
relentless
thought you never got worn out. You never thought about quitting.
No.
Focus the entire way. See, that's impressive.
Because I looked at it as long-term achievements, short-term achievements, and every quarter or semester, those grades would motivate me to keep going because I scored very well. When I got a 4.0 through all of my graduate years, the master's, including the doctorate. I focused, and it was just, I told myself, what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick my face in these books. Not going to let up until I'm done. And I resolved myself to either they're going to kill me first before I leave this program, or I'm not until I graduate.
That's impressive. I get motivated. I get chills listening to that. I get so motivated.
You can do it. Oh, there were people in Europe, people in Hawaii, people in Africa that were part of these online learning platforms.
What kind of a student were you in high school? Did you have this same focus and drive?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Because of my home environment, stress, confusion, abuse, I couldn't focus. I was always aloof and I always had other things in my mind. I would in class, I would drift off and, think about what's going to happen when I got home.
Man, that sounds just like me. I tell you, but here's the interesting thing. I've spoken to a lot of friends. Again, the wonders of social media. There's a lot of ugliness out there, but there's a lot of beauty.
Right.
And that beauty has manifested itself when I have gotten back in touch with old friends from high school. And we talk about our experiences in high school, and all of them, just about all of them, are sharing this thing that they viewed me as this happy-go-lucky, good-natured kid. But when I think back to my high school times, all I can think of is depression, confusion, zero motivation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's pretty fascinating how some of my former classmates have a completely different image of me, a total contrast to what I felt about myself.
Right. I thought that, my family was the only screwed up family. I didn't think.
Well, yeah, you never think, because that's not something you talk about as a teenager. You don't talk about those things with your friends. So you internalize all of that and you think, yeah, I'm alone. It's just me. Nobody else is going through this. It's just me.
Exactly. But what I did was, my academic journey began in East Akron. We lived in the projects. And there was a lot of drugs and, ghetto things going on that weren't very positive and weren't very conducive to bettering yourself. And what happened was when I was in the 10th grade, we moved to North Plain.
I'm sorry, you moved to where?
North Canton.
North
Canton, Ohio.
Yes.
And I went to Glen Oak High School. And it was basically the first time I encountered white people.
Aha. Yes.
You know, and it was like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, if you ever seen that movie. So
Absolutely.
you had the jocks, you had the stoners, you know, you had...
The burnouts, as we called them.
Yeah, burnouts. Right. Burnouts. So I went to West Junior High School in West Akron, and I'm sure you probably know what that was like, you know.
Absolutely.
It was like Cooley High, basically.
See, because we moved away from Goodyear Heights in East Akron. Okay. We moved away from there to Norton, Ohio, when I was in third grade. So I'm pretty much I've pretty much grown up in that rural / suburb. I think at that time Norton was just a village. It was the village of Norton. It wasn't even a city.
Right.
So that rural, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, been in a rural setting. So even more white, if you will, even more of that cookie cutter society. In rural Ohio type of thing. Yeah, that was when I was in third grade.
Right. So when I went out there, it was the first time that I'd ever seen children of doctors, business people, bankers, and
that's a big difference from West Akron.
It is. So I started I wouldn't say fantasizing, but I would look for role models in their parents.
Right.
I talked to some of my students, of his fellow students now, to ask, what do your parents do? Because they lived in, very nice environments. And so I wanted to know what they did. So what I would have to do to get there.
So you had that curiosity already as a teenager.
Yes. Yeah. I always wanted something better.
Yeah.
I always wanted to live in a better environment, have better parents. Because I knew that when I had a child, I would want to bring that child up in that better environment, rather than the environment I came from. But one thing I learned is that even in those better environments, their families are screwed up too.
Absolutely.
So, I didn't learn that until later. But
the grass is not. Oh well, the grass may be greener on the other side, but there's some weeds in that grass too.
Exactly. But the imagery was positive imagery that I experienced. Yeah. So I always told myself, look, I have to go to college.
So you knew that. You knew that already then. Okay.
I knew I had to. I just couldn't make it without it. I saw that things were more computerized, labor jobs were leaving. And so you had to really be on the cusp of innovation, learn these new, get a degree and learn these new occupations,
That's interesting that you had those thoughts already as a teenager, or maybe it's me who was kind of, maybe I was the anomaly. I don't know. But all I remember is confusion and uncertainty in those years. I had no idea. I knew I was good at football and I knew I was smart. I didn't care for schoolwork at all because I never had the focus, but I knew I was smart and I knew I was an exceptional athlete, but I never knew what I was going to do with my life. But it seems like you were already walking a path. At that time.
I didn't know how to get there, though. I didn't have any positive.
But you knew where you wanted. You didn't know the route, but you knew where you wanted to go. Yeah.
Right. So what happened was, when I was 15 years old, my mother sat me down. I was in the 10th grade. I was in the 11th grade, 16 years old. No, 15. And she sat me down and said, look, you either go to Job Corps or you live in the streets.
Wow.
I was not a bad kid, man.
No.
My brother did drugs. She did drugs. And so I was always the odd man out. And so I never fit in.
No.
My brother was her favorite. They were born on the same day, but, I wasn't. And they got high together. And
what was the drug they
marijuana.
chose? Marijuana. Okay.
She would let him get high, let his friends smoke at the house.
Wow.
And I always criticized her for that. You're a parent.
Yeah.
Said, look, you got to go. So rather than live in the streets, I chose Job Corps. I was forced out of high school and put in Job Corps, which I think really helped save my life. Because even though I went to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I learned a welding trade, and I got my GED.
And this was at the age of 15.
Right. I got my GED when I turned 16. So technically, I left high school a year before my peers left high school in Glen Oak.
Help me understand. How did you feel? I kind of look at that as a type of rejection. Your family rejected you in a way.
Right.
And that rejection literally took you out of the home and put you into a strange new situation, a whole state away.
I was angry.
And you were 15 years old. So you felt anger, yeah?
I felt anger. I felt abandonment. I felt rejection.
Because your mother, it sounds like your mother pretty much told you, you have to get out.
Exactly. Because I didn't approve of her lifestyle, the drugs and so forth. So she told me I had to leave.
Wow.
And that severed our relationship. My father, we'll talk about him too, but he was worse. At least my mom tried, at some point, but she gave up. But my mother came from a dysfunctional environment.
Yeah.
She was never shown love and nurturing from her parents. So it was almost a generational curse.
And those things are inherited. Not that it's an excuse, but it is a reason for much abuse in families, because if you've lived it, you have a tendency to pass it on to the next generation. Right. It doesn't have to be that way, but it tends to be that way, and that's a sad thing. A lot of people don't understand that you can choose to step outside of that pattern.
Right.
And it's not something that has to be passed on to the next generation.
Exactly. But see, and I was born in 1965. My mother was 15 years old. During that time, being a teenage mother carried a lot of stigmatism.
Absolutely.
Ridicule.
Absolutely.
A lack of any type of understanding. There were no social programs for teenage mothers back then.
No.
She was really in a bad state, and I think that wore on her mentally. Her parents did not support her. When she told my grandfather that she was pregnant, he threw her down the stairs.
Oh, Lord.
It was crazy, I tell you. And that's why I told you before we talked, I said, I'll tell you about my life. You know what I'm saying? So, but you know what? I do carry depression issues from that, my childhood, and which I didn't realize until I left the police department, because I had to get a psychological evaluation. And they said, you suffer from chronic depression. And I was like, really? I do? And so I was always wondering, why did I always feel isolated? Why did I feel alone? Why was I always stressed out? And why did I always have these nightmares, and flashbacks from different issues in my life. And those are, signs of chronic depression. So, but anyway, when I left for Job Corps, it was a blessing in disguise, because I was finally in a structured environment.
Let me stop you for a second. Tell us, what is Job Corps? I have a lot of listeners. My listeners are divided about 50-50 between the United States and outside of the United States. So there's a lot of people that don't know what Job Corps is. Tell us what that is.
Job Corps is a trade school / GED or high school diploma. Residential facility. When you go away, and there's different locations throughout the country, you go live in this dormitory environment, and you get your high school or GED, and you learn a skilled trade. And you can be, at that time, you could be a Job Corps for up to 2 years. And the ages were 15 to 22.
Oh, wow. Up to 22.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I was 15, so my mom had to sign for me to go, which I did go. But so it was a good environment. I learned a skilled trade, and I got my GED. So
it was sufficient adult supervision that it kept the environment clean. It kept it productive. There was no, there was no
malfeasance.
When I think of an institution like that, if I can use the word institution, I feel that they have a tendency to get this stamp of disapproval that there's this underlying criminal element that's in it with very little adult supervision. But it wasn't like that at all. It was quite controlled.
Not when I went. It was a highly structured environment and very nurturing. You had people there that gave a damn about you.
Yeah.
They wanted to see you succeed.
Yeah.
You had regular school teachers that taught in public schools, and you had people from the outside industries that were teach different skilled trades, carpentry, welding. You had medical assisting. You could learn to be a chef.
Was it was it a dormitory environment, or did you have your own? Okay,
it was a dormitory. I actually went to where I went up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the place where I lived was it used to be the Gerald Elementary School.
Okay, yeah.
And they converted it to a dormitory and trade school and learning facility with Job Corps. And like I said, it was a blessing. It got me out of that situation. It showed me a different way.
Yeah.
And I started to believe in myself.
I would think that was probably the first time in your life that you had any kind of structure with solid backup from adult figures. Am I right?
Yes. I mean, I had lived around drugs and crime, and
so this changed your life.
Yeah, pimps and prostitutes, things like that. I had come from that environment into a highly structured, nurturing environment.
So this changed your life, yeah.
Oh, it did. It really did. And I left there after about 9 months with my GED and my welding certificate. I went back home to my mom, but as soon as I got there, I said, hey, I can't stay here. They were still doing this. I knew it. I said this will be a step back.
Yeah.
So I signed up for the U.S. Army, United States Army. I was 17 years old, and my mom had to sign for me to go. But I had my GED, and there was nothing stopping me.
Right.
So I joined the Army, and once I got there, that helped to make a man out of me.
Well, sure. Discipline, starting in boot camp, probably, right. and then whatever you experienced while you were serving. Absolutely.
And that stays with you for life.
Absolutely, absolutely. U.S. Marines, for me, it changed my life. That is the basis of who I am today. Is based on my time in the United States Marines. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. You learn to see things through.
Sure.
And failure was not an option. So I said, you know what? I left the Army, and I left the Army in December, and I started at Kent State in the fall. I still didn't have exactly what I needed. I still didn't have. I knew about making things happen, but I was still working on that progress, that path to achievement.
Yeah.
So, and plus being that I was in the Army in a kind of an isolated environment, once I got out of the Army, oh man, it was party time. I was still young. I was 20 years old.
Time to cut loose a little bit.
Oh my God. You had the fraternity houses, and it was like, oh, do I read this book, or do I go party, at the fraternity house? And so the fraternity house won out at that time. It took me a while to get to where I needed to be in terms of a positive frame of mind.
Well, everybody has to play a little bit. Everybody has to have that phase where they play a little bit.
Man, I played a lot. Okay. Jeez. But, the person I am today is a result of all those experiences.
Sure.
So for the whole time while I was on, and like I said, I started in 86 at Kent State University. I bombed out in 1990, okay, and I joined the police department in 1992. I'm sorry.
Let's talk about that. What led you to the police department? What made you want to work there?
Well, a buddy of mine was a fireman in Massillon, and I actually wanted to be a firefighter. I took the firefighter's exam in Canton, Ohio. I scored in the top 5, but since I wasn't a paramedic, they skipped over me.
Okay.
They wanted paramedics, and that was a big advantage for them because it would save them money.
Yeah.
From sending people to paramedic schools.
Right.
I said, you know what, this Akron police exam is coming up, they started out at 28 a year versus 20 in Canton for the fireman's exam. Yeah. So I said, you know what, I'll go ahead and take the police exam.
Go where the money is.
Exactly. But see, money's not everything.
Well, it's my grandmother used to say, bless her heart, she used to say, money, how does she say that? Money will not buy you happiness, but it will pay for the search.
Right. Oh, okay. All right. She was a wise woman. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that kind of sums it up right there, because money is not everything, but money is something.
Right.
In other words.
Right. It was something. All right. It was something.
Well, back in those days, an $8,000 salary difference was pretty big. That was pretty significant.
Right.
That was pretty significant.
I had just gotten married, and, we wanted to, buy a house and so forth. And, so I said, let me go and take the police exam. I took that, passed it, and I got hired in 1992. Yeah. February the 18th, 1992 was when I got hired.
I was in Okinawa at that time, U.S. Marines.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Okay. So, then, I knew that it would not be a lifelong endeavor on the police department, because...
Why?
I view police officers as stifled mentally, because they're dealing with the same stuff day in and day out, and the environment was not conducive to learning. It did not help expand my worldview.
Okay.
It didn't take me places where I really wanted to go, and it didn't challenge me enough.
Okay.
I wanted to be challenged, because change comes with conflict, but I wanted the type of conflict that kept me kind of, off a little bit, so I would learn.
So you didn't want that easy path. You wanted something that would challenge you. You wanted something that would force you to stretch out.
Right.
And expand.
I wanted to be indispensable. Okay. Police officers are dispensable.
Dime a dozen.
It's always some guy waiting to take your job. So I always felt uncomfortable with that. I wanted to make myself such a valuable asset that I would not be just a throwaway type of person, but I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny.
See, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with just about all of that. I guess I had a different perspective, because when I became a police officer, again, I grew up from the time I was 7. That's when we moved out of the city.
Yeah, you did.
We were out here in this rural atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Then I had my little stint in college, and then off into the Marines. And then when I came back and eventually got into police work, it was on the south side of Chicago, which was this big, busy, urban place with challenges that I had never seen before.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Comparatively, if I were to compare you and I was much more sheltered because of where I grew up.
Right.
So for me to start working as a police officer in that kind of environment in a big city area like Chicago, it was an extreme challenge.
Okay.
And for me, it was a period of pretty drastic growth for me.
Okay.
So I was able to find the challenge, but I can see with the background that you had, you had already had. You knew what the city was like. You knew what the streets were like.
The streets are like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, and I didn't know that. I never knew that until
I bet
until I started working.
Like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. I remember coming home that first day after my first shift. Coming out of the academy, and I start working. And I was literally like, wow, okay, this is what I signed up for.
See, I was a little envious of guys like you. But I didn't know that your life would be just as crazy or not worse than mine. I always thought, well, here's a black guy, whose father's a professional and who's living in a good environment. And here I am. When we lived in Canton, another thing that really changed me, I lived in public housing.
Right.
But our public housing project is right smack dab in the middle of the suburbs. So I could walk a block over and see all of these families, with fathers and, happy and having backyard parties and this and that. And that was totally new to me. So I could actually walk over to your backyard and see you doing your little family outing in the back and take inspiration from that, because I didn't have that.
I see.
That's
a unique experience, because most people, when they think of housing projects, they think that it's totally removed from those kind of experiences, but you were right there, right beside it.
Oh my God, yes.
See, I never had that. I wasn't streetwise until I started working the police job. I became someone who was aware of the streets during the course of I was an officer for 7 years. Okay. And that's when I learned about the streets and what was going on. It wasn't inherent.
The code of the streets.
Yeah. Right. I did not grow up with that.
Yeah.
But even in these suburban homes, these rural homes, there can be an element of ugliness within the four walls of the home.
Oh, I know, right?
So,
and one thing I learned about, let's say, your community when you're growing up. They didn't call the police.
No.
On domestic issues. They never called the police.
Never did.
Which further enhances false image of happiness and ecstasy and just, living on the,
and I think, and that goes,
well-being.
Exactly. And that ties into what I was talking about earlier about how my friends from my high school days, talking with them, they think that I had this enchanted life.
Yeah, ideal life, right. All-American life.
Exactly. When I walked around, and those were the most depressing, isolating moments of my life.
Wow. See, I didn't realize that until I got older.
Yeah.
Which, you know what, is probably good, because the idealized image I had of people like you helped to push me, because I wanted to be part of that culture.
Right. It was motivation. It was something you were reaching for. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I probably, if you and I went to the same high school, I would have looked at you and listened to you and watched you, and watched how your parents would come to the school and pick you up, use proper English, upstanding, beautiful closeness from what I could see, It
was,
and I want that.
Talking about the trauma or the depressive times and all that stuff, it was what it was. But I will say this.
Right.
I think probably the best things that my parents ever did for me was to move out of Goodyear Heights.
Oh, definitely.
And move us out there to Norton. We were we had a solid upper middle class upbringing.
Right.
So I am fortunate for that. But again, that solid upper middle.
At what cost, right?
Exactly. At what cost?
Yeah, I know.
At what cost?
I understand. Like I said, I know that now,
So you walk into this police job, and you how long did it take you before you realized that it wasn't going to be a lasting career for you?
I got hired on February the 18th. I would say February 19th.
Didn't take you long. Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. With that in mind, you still worked there for 15 years. That's that could be potentially 5 years away from retirement.
Right. That, because I had a child, I had a son, and the insurance was incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was able to afford certain things.
Yes.
And that became kind of like an anchor. You become somewhat because, you got money coming in, you're working side jobs, you're making $70,000, $80,000 a year, including extra jobs, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, but in the back of your mind, I still had that 1.97. And I saw the police department as almost like a chain gang type of thing, where they controlled you while you were on duty, while you were off duty.
Yeah.
Your salary, you had a salary cap where you could never really go above that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was almost like being in the military. It was a paramilitary experience.
Yeah.
And I wanted true independence. I don't knock people like you.
No.
More,
well, but again, you and I had a little bit different experiences in a couple of ways. One, I had a different childhood just because of the location where I grew up, but also I think I had a different kind of police department, because It was a suburban, we were only, maybe 60, 65 officers, whereas Akron is a major, that's a major city with all of the major city internal politics that you have to navigate through.
Oh, my God. It was horrible.
And I would imagine it's also more of a cookie cutter work environment because it's such a big department. And it has to be run in more of a paramilitary style. Whereas we were more, of a genuine brotherhood where I was. Not to say that there weren't internal politics there, but it's just it's not in the same scale. We were such a small department.
Okay.
I think 60, 65 officers at the top end. So.
Oh, wow. See, we had 550 officers.
Right.
At that time. See, honestly, you have to have a military structure and a sense of control over your officers to maintain that type of environment. They had to be that way. They had to micromanage. They had to really kind of structurize and not be too casual. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like in your department, there's more of a brotherhood. Hey, John, hey, Les, you talking to the chief or whatnot, and everything's a little more casual as long as you did your job.
Right.
But see, you could do your job. And in a department like Akron, you still have to deal with the politics.
Yeah, see, we had the opportunity to sit in the break room and have a cup of coffee with the chief and shoot the shit with the chief. And I would imagine you can't do that at a department like Akron.
Not really. No, you have to. It has to be a divider because you have to maintain that structure.
Right, exactly.
You can't be too friendly, because the whole system could collapse.
Right. See, things may have changed where I was now, but at that time it was fairly well laid back. A little bit of internal politics. There was in such a small department, there sure were a lot of officers who had the same last name. I'll put it to you that way.
Right.
So there was
nepotism. That's the thing happened.
So
but then there was the racism too.
Yeah, and I will say this: that was an issue. There was a lot of talk, a lot of issues about there not being enough black officers where I was, to represent the citizenry.
Same thing in Akron.
Yeah,
it was the same thing.
Which blows my mind. I've been keeping up throughout the years with a little bit of the politics in Akron and whatnot, and I could never understand, with the city having the demographic that it has, why has the police department never really reflected that in such a big city as Akron? And to have that kind of a problem is pretty deplorable.
Exactly. They did not represent the community that they served. And
that's pretty ugly.
So much,
that's pretty ugly.
And the institutional racism, even the black officers, if you weren't, let's say someone that tried to really with the white colleagues, if you sacrificed your social identity as an African American, you could fit in. But see, I was always conscious of who I am and the struggles that I've been through and the struggles of my friends, because a lot of people that we arrested were people I grew up with.
Yeah.
And I always had compassion for them.
And,
and, I would have black prisoners tell me, because I drove the wagon, tell me, look, I'm glad you showed up because they were beating my ass and things like that. So I always knew that, racism was a big problem.
Isn't it frustrating to hear, especially in the political climate of the last 4 years, isn't it frustrating to hear people try to downplay or deny systematic racism and racism, period? How do you feel about it?
It bothers me, but not to the degree they did back then, because not to sound arrogant, I've succeeded in this racist culture.
Yes.
I'm a doctor, professor, business person. So I tell them that no matter how you feel about me, I'm better off than you are. I encounter a racist.
Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't that feel good?
It does, but at the same time, I'm no better than the poorest of the poorest person. But when I'm confronted with racists who try and marginalize me as a person, because I am an African American first.
Yes.
Okay. Because that's the first thing you see.
Right.
When you see me.
Right.
You see a black person. You don't see a police officer. You don't see a college professor. You don't see a doctor. You don't see a lawyer. You don't see anything like that. You see me as a black man. And so that's how I carry myself. I'm always conscious of how I present myself to others, if you understand what I'm saying, because I don't want
absolutely.
I don't want to legitimize or give them something to say, see, that's what I was saying about black people.
I'm glad you say that, because I'm also very conscious of that. See, not only am I a black man, but I'm a black man in Norway, and that's a special thing. That's a whole nother suitcase of challenges that has to be opened up and sorted through. And
you're also American too.
Also American. So there's a lot of benefits in all of those things, but there's also a lot of baggage that presents a whole nother set of problems and challenges. But I am very aware. I don't want to give those people who want to put me in a box, who want to put a stamp on my forehead.
Marginalize you.
I don't want to give them a reason. I don't want to give them an excuse. Right. I don't want to support any of their ideas. I don't want them to be able to say, "Yeah, look at John. See, I told you.
I know exactly.
Look at him. He's just like they are." I don't want them to say that.
And at the same time, I don't want to say things that put my community in a bad light. Right. So those same people can say, "See, Les said it. So it must be true."
Well, I agree with you right there. I'm very conscious of my presentation. How am I presenting myself? How am I representing?
Exactly.
It's important. It's a little bit extra baggage, but I carry it. I carry it willingly and proudly. Willingly and proudly.
Oh, definitely. When I walk into a university and I'm probably one of 3 African American professors, there's a certain responsibility that I carry.
Yeah.
And I bestow that responsibility with my students, and I love all of my students, but I pay particular interest to African-American students because on a campus like Kent State University, we're isolated.
Yeah.
We never really fit into the structure of the university. So I always try and inspire everybody, but I really try and inspire those African-American students.
Yeah,
because I'm also a Kent State alumni, so I take pride in that. And I tell you, in an average classroom of 40 students, I may have one black person, and they could be African, they could be Indian. Yes. I consider them black too, but it could be any from any demographic.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So with my third eye, I'm always looking to see if they're okay.
It feels good to be talking about this because it's a subject that doesn't get touched on often enough. I experience very often here in Norway when I bring up that topic about how in certain areas of society there's so little representation for black people. And people look at me or they tell me that I'm crazy or too focused on that. But I don't think you can be focused enough because there's there's not enough advocacy for the black viewpoint, for the black experience, for the black standpoint. Because we are part of society too, but society very often shoves us out to the fringes. Somebody has to advocate for us.
Exactly, and I do. I'm an advocate. I'm also an advocate for LGBTQ individuals, people of color, women, all marginalized societies.
It's about equality across the board, regardless. Equality across the board, regardless. Right. And who could be against that? I ask this question almost daily. How can people be against that? What does it harm you if the other becomes a part of the common society? How does that harm you? But people act like it's going to take something from them.
Exactly.
To be inclusive. I don't understand it.
Well, it's about power. If you introduce other cultures into, let's say America with white supremacy, if you introduce other cultures, they feel like you're going to take away from their culture.
Right.
That's why they're trying to keep other cultures out of this country. Mexicans, unless you come from Norway.
Norway's okay. Norway's okay.
Other European countries. If you come from Mexico, if you come from Africa, if you come from any other place of color, they try and keep you out of the country because they feel like you're going to take away from
right.
American culture,
right.
and you're going to make it less white. So it's a balancing act for people like you and me.
It is.
You know, we have to balance being African Americans and also balance working in the system. Right. Which is a burden at times. We have to have a dual consciousness. We have to learn how to act in both environments. Yeah. Yeah. It's tiring. It's tiring sometimes. Oh my God. Yeah, man. I don't know. It was a real eye opener for me coming to Norway. It made me, and this is a strange thing to say. It's hard to verbalize it, but coming to Norway made me even more aware of my blackness as an American. Wow. I can imagine that. I mean, are you often the only black person in in the room? And yes, the only
everywhere,
American in the room?
Constantly. Right. Constantly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's not hard to imagine.
So there's a certain amount of marginalization in the United States, which is bad enough, but you can multiply that, to the nth power over here in Norway. Right. I lived in Germany when I was in the military, and one thing I found with the Germans is that it's not a lot of racism, but there can be a lot of anti-Americanism. Right. Yeah. So I felt more comfortable in Europe than I did in America, because a lot of Germans knew African Americans as being victims, right, of the American system. So they would go out of their way to treat you like a human being. So at one point in time, I was going to stay over there, but I knew I wanted to come back and go to college. So right. That's why I did. Well, and I see that little extra amount of compassion and understanding here in Norway. I see that as well. But there's also an undercurrent of xenophobia and racism here, but it's different. It's like racism light. I'm not out in the streets fearing for my life from the police or things like that. Good. So in that way, it doesn't compare with what we go through in America. But there is this undercurrent of, I always feel like I have to, and maybe this is just well, no, it's not just a feeling. This is something that manifests itself in practical terms, where I have to do a little extra to prove myself. Oh, they see, and here's another thing. They'll see the skin color, so they'll treat me accordingly. But then, when they find out I'm from the United States, it's almost as if they breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, you're okay then. Wow. And so, what does that say? Am I supposed to be thankful for that? Wow. Or am I supposed to take that for the xenophobia that it is? You see what I'm saying? It's a very dynamic situation. It puts you in a transactional situation where you have to use that as leverage to better the outcome of whatever you're dealing with. Exactly. And then move on. Move on. Yeah. But it's tiring. It's a step. It is tiring, I bet. Those extra steps that have to be gone through. Racism's tiring, period. Oh, it's tiring, brother. Gotta have a strong back. We're born in the belly of the beast, and we die in the belly of the beast. Amen. In order to be successful, you have to learn how to deal with it. Wow, what a conversation here! I had so many, and we keep branching off here. Can I go back to your educational time? Of course. Okay. Of course. Do it. So, you get your bachelor's in healthcare information. No, my bachelor's in general studies. I'm sorry. In general studies, then you get your master's in healthcare information, business, MBA, and MBA information. Got it. Now, doctorate. Yes, sir. Talk about that. I started my doctoral program in 2013 at Walden University, a virtual learning online platform. I did that because I had so much success during my master's period. And I really like the convenience of taking classes when I wanted to. Like, I could be, like, I'm a nighttime person. Yeah, how are you still awake now, man? I know, right? Well, I breed dogs, and I sometimes have to get up in the middle of the night and take them out, and I go back to bed. It's basically about them because they're puppies right now. So. I want to talk about your breeding business as well. Okay. I want to talk about, but your doctor, what is your doctor degree in? My doctorate is in business administration, a DBA, with a focus on leadership. Yeah. There you go. So I started in 2013, and I finished in December of 2017.
That was a journey.
Okay.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Why? What made it so hard?
All the academic research, putting everything together.
Yeah.
Right. Putting everything together to format a conclusion, conducting the analysis part of it, because you start out with a hypothesis. It has to be unique and it has to bring something to the field.
Right.
You can't copy off anybody else.
No, it's got to be all original.
Yes.
Your own thoughts.
And you, oh my God, man, it was so hard. And then you have to use all the resources and references from different experiments. You have to use all of that to help solidify your conclusion. And it was very intense. And then you have to present that during an oral defense. You have to defend your research. You have to defend your whole study.
Yeah.
So that was really, really arduous.
I get a headache. I get a headache just thinking about it.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm going to send you a link to my doctoral study. It's on the internet.
Do that, please. I'd love to read
I'll send it to you. Oh, brother, yes. My doctoral study was. Oh, geez, I'm so tired right now.
What time is it there?
It is. I'm okay, bro. It's like 2:17 in the morning. But my doctoral research was how to maximize profits and minimize losses while using green supply chain management.
Okay.
So I'll send the link to you.
Do that, please.
You can actually read it.
I'll read it and I'll post it with this episode too, so my listeners can see it.
Oh, great.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun research, a lot of time. I spent up to 12 hours a day doing my research and writing my, they call it a doctoral study.
Yeah.
But it's a dissertation.
Yeah.
And it has to be sequenced in a certain format. You have to answer different questions based on university requirements. And it was tough. It was tough.
I can imagine. See, that's the kind of stuff that scares me away from furthering my education.
Brother, you could do it. Trust me. You take everything you've been through.
Yeah.
You take everything you've been through in your life and use it as motivation, and you can do anything.
Absolutely.
You could.
And I believe that. I do believe that.
And you talk about the age level of the age demographic during your studies. I leveled out evenly during my doctoral program. I wasn't the youngest. I wasn't the oldest. I was right there. Yeah. With my peers.
See, and that's an eye opener because I never would have thought of it that way. I've always imagined, I'd say probably for the last 15, maybe the last 20 years, that if I were to go back and start to re-educate myself, I would definitely be the oldest one. But I can see. I'm 51. 51.
Oh, okay. I'm on a couple. Now you would be somewhere in the upper 2/3.
Okay.
Thirds as far. You wouldn't be the oldest. You wouldn't be the youngest. You got people who are 80 or 90 years old going back to school, man. And online learning is the best thing for them.
Well, that's the way I would go. It would have to be online. I would have to do things in my own little bubble. The classroom, the classroom environment. I know that's not for me. That is not for me.
When I was, I think I told you I was 43 and I started back. Yeah. I started back in the classroom, and I was often the oldest one or two students in the classroom. A lot of youngsters, but that's okay though. I mean, I outshined them all. I did, brother. I mean, but one thing about that is that when you are a non-traditional student, you tend to have a little more respect by your professors because a lot of them are your age.
That's right.
And so they're going to treat you different. You stay at the class, and
I see.
You talk to them almost like a peer.
I see. Yeah.
And so you're more comfortable with them. I remember one instructor, and I cannot remember her name, man. I don't know if she still teaches or not at Kent State. And she told me, she said, "Look, you're smart, you're focused, get your doctorate degree.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you go, as long as it's a credit, but you need to get your degree." And that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
I also an attorney that was teaching at Kent State. She had worked with law enforcement, the prosecutors, et cetera. So we had a similar background.
Okay. Yeah.
And we dialogued. She also inspired me.
Yeah.
And I saw her after I got my doctorate degree.
Uh-huh.
And the girl I was going out with at the time, we went to a store and I saw her and she didn't quite remember me. She knew I looked familiar, but then I stopped her. I said, "You remember me?" And I talked. She's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." I said, "You know what? You inspired me. I'm a doctor now." And it was such an emotional experience,
That's
man.
beautiful.
You see somebody, you're an undergrad with no degree, and then you see them and you're a doctor.
That's beautiful.
You're on their level, man. It almost brought tears to my eyes.
I get that feeling quite a bit. The first job that I had here in Norway was as a teacher and a project leader at a high school.
Wow.
And so this is back in 2002. I got that job actually before I even learned how to speak Norwegian.
Really?
I got that job based on my background as a police officer. I worked, I was a narcotics and gang detective and also a juvenile officer. And it's that combination, especially having the background as a juvenile officer that got me into this teaching environment and leading a project here in Norway. And so this is back in 2002. So when I had some of these kids, they were as young as 12 years old. Now I see them almost 20 years later. I run into them around town, and I tell you, it's so emotional to see some of these people who at the time were kids who were living in a troubled household. And, not to say that I have some kind of God complex, but just to know that I had a hand in making things a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, and you can do that. You never know how you inspire people.
And some of the things that they're telling me, I barely remember who some of these people are when they approach me today. Right. And it's not embarrassing. Right. It's just that, at the time, I didn't really, it was a lot of people, and I may not have had that much contact with them as a child. But when they tell me now as an adult, they've got a spouse, they've got kids, they've got a career, and they tell me how something I said or did molded their path. And it's a humbling experience because that whole thing where you say you never know who you affect.
Right.
That's a very responsible. I mean, you have to be responsible. That's a big and important position to be in because you can influence people for the betterment of their lives, but you can also have a negative effect on someone's life. So you have to be aware of how we talked about presentation and how you carry yourself and how you represent. That is something that you have to be aware of constantly,
all the time, because
as good as it feels to influence someone where you better their path, you can also ruin someone's life if you aren't acting right at the right time. It's humbling. I'm always conscious. Yeah,
I'm always conscious of my public interactions.
It's very humbling
when people know that you're a professor, doctor, police officer, whatever, they expect more.
They expect something out of you. Yeah,
and if you negate that presentation, it reflects on the whole, the whole demographic, the whole, occupation. You just, if you give them a good thing, it's like, oh, okay, that's great. I can maybe be like that person. But if you negate that positive image, then it could reflect on all black men, whoever, all black people, whatever, So I'm always conscious of that when I'm on campus. I teach at 2 universities, by the way.
Yeah, you're at Kent State, right?
Kent State, and because of the pandemic, they were learning. So I'm not working there right now. I'm on a hiatus from there, but I also teach at an HBCU, or historically black college university, Knoxville College in Tennessee.
I'm sorry, say that again. I lost
you. It's called Knoxville College in Tennessee.
Okay, Knoxville, Tennessee, yeah.
Yeah, they're about 100, 200 years old. I can't remember exactly, back in the 1800s. But an online learning, they have an online learning platform right now. So I'm teaching online. I teach business courses, ethics, finance, economics, business, basic business courses, I've been teaching there for about 2 or 3 years.
Wow, man! Congratulations.
Thank you.
So not only a professor, not only a teacher, but a teacher at an HBCU. Man,
right.
Is it possible to respect you any more than I do?
Oh my God, man! You would do the same. You would take the same path I did.
Absolutely.
I know you would. So
absolutely.
If you could teach at an HBCU virtually where you're at now, you'd probably do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would. Yeah.
It's a calling, and it's a responsibility. It's not.
Well, it's about giving back. It's about giving back.
Right.
It's about sharing of the success. And if we don't do that internally, we're never going to lift ourselves as a people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've dealt with so many student-related issues. I'm also. It's like I'm also a parent.
Oh yeah, yeah.
These are young students.
Looking for a mentor. They're young students looking for a mentor.
I use innovation to help these students reach their goals. I provide, extra compassion. I do that with every student, not just at the HBCU. I do it at Kent State as well.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to push people by being a servant leader, giving them the example, and making that example attainable for them.
Yeah.
And it's a very personal thing for me. Coming from my humble beginnings, I feel it's my responsibility. At our age, in our 50s, we're not really concerned. We're concerned about altruism and giving back, and inspiring the next generation. We want to be comfortable now.
Sure, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. But we also want to inspire. We want to provide inspiration.
That pretty much wraps up the reason why I do this podcast.
Right.
Of course, I'm in it for my egotistical, for my self-betterment. There's a lot of that in there, but I also want to be able to. My goal is, after every conversation with every guest, I want it to have lifted me, enlightened me in some way, motivated me and inspired me in some way, but I also want that same thing to happen for my listeners. I want them to listen to you and I and be able to pull out elements of this conversation and apply it to their practical lives.
Right.
I want to give that, I want to open that door and give that to my listeners.
Well, I pray that my story reaches one person.
Well, it has me. So mission accomplished already.
I'm honored, man. I'm honored, John. I love you, brother. I'm a very humble person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who didn't make it to where I'm at. I've lost friends to death, drugs, and other issues.
Well, it really is amazing that what you've gone through and being able to reach the level that you're at, regardless. That's an achievement. That's motivating.
God has protected me, man. I tell you, because I've fallen many times. I've fallen so many times, but I've gotten back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I keep pushing. I never let anyone determine my outcome. And that's something that I really thank the police department for, because I saw a lot of people who were complacent.
I see. Yeah.
They were fighting for $1 pay raise or whatever. To me, I'm like, wow, money's not everything, but you're fighting for $1 pay raise.
And you say that, and I remember, I want to say it was around 99, 2000, right around there. There was a lot of issues in the Akron Police Department about the pay. And I remember thinking, why are they being so nitpicky? Because it's not a meaningful sum. Maybe it was back like $1 or 50-cent raise or something, and they were just
1%, 2% raises. That's what they were going for.
And just
it
seemed like they had the wrong focus.
But you know what? They created this culture down there where you settle for scraps.
Yeah, yeah.
A 2% or 1% pay raise is not a lot. And if you got a family, to me, I want to be a little more independent to where I can determine what I bring home.
Right.
Through my hard work and my efforts.
Yes.
And the amount of stress you're dealing with down there, man, you deserve to make 6 figures a year.
Sure.
But they're nitpicking, and it's always something you got to give to get, and the politics, and it was horrible, man. The racism, you got a third of the population down there are police officers, but maybe 1 or 2% are in management. You know,
right.
You got African American police officers down there with master's degrees, and they're not being promoted at the same rate that the white counterparts who don't have any degrees are being promoted.
And how can that be ignored? How can that be allowed to perpetuate? Why is there no change in that? Numbers don't lie. So it's not like people are just boo-hooing about an issue that doesn't exist. It is an issue. It's a concrete issue that the black population is not represented in the police force in Akron, and the officers who are there are not being promoted along the same lines as their white counterparts. How is that ignored year after year after year?
Because they create a culture of fear amongst the African American officers. If you expose certain things, then it's going to come back to bite you in the future. You're going to suffer the repercussions of your decisions. Okay, so these officers are more reluctant to expose the disparities on the department.
Okay.
So they settle, or they punish other African Americans in the community unjustifiably to prove their worth to the white supremacist structure down there, or infrastructure, should I say? So it's something where you have to give and sacrifice who you are,
right,
just to prove your worth.
Yeah,
in order to get the scraps off the table.
Man, that's just
yeah.
So you've come away from that. Well, I mean, you have a traditional job in the sense that you're a professor and you're getting your income from that, but you've also branched out into something that is quite the independent venture. Tell me about these beautiful dogs. I tell you, man, you post these pictures, and it just makes me want to get a dog, and I can't because I'm hyper allergic. So
that's right. Yeah,
that's why. Yeah,
right.
But tell me about this. First of all, what made you get interested in breeding dogs, and then just kind of tell me about the ins and outs of it and your experience with it.
When I started my master's degree, well, probably towards the end of it, financial aid was running out because you don't have an unlimited supply of money from the government.
Right.
That runs out. So
we do have an unlimited supply from the government here in Norway, by the way.
Wow,
for educational purpose. Yeah.
Oh my God. So I had to figure out another way to make money so I could complete my process and my doctorate. So I just sat down one day and I started brainstorming, and I started looking at different options, and dog breeding somehow popped up in my mind. So I at first I wanted to breed cane corsos. So I looked into it, and the profit margin was not high enough.
Oh, really?
I couldn't.
Such a beautiful and popular animal. I would think that would be profitable. No. Okay.
No, you can get a world-class cane corso for $1,500.
Okay.
Or less. It could be $1,000, but I looked at old English Bulldogs, and they were going for $2,000, $2,500 or so. I said, whoa, I think I'm going to go ahead and get into that. So I bought my first one, a male, in 2011.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, 2011. I think I was in my master's program. 2011, I bought him for about $1,200 from Michigan. And so I let him grow a little and save more money. Got my financial aid kickback checks. And I bought my female.
Uh-huh.
And I tell you, man, you have 9 puppies at that time they were going for $1,500. I was selling them at that amount. And, you get 12, 13.
Oh, we lost him. Let's see. Let me call him back. Okay. We had some technical difficulties, but I will call him back. And in the blink of an eye, we'll be back.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, sorry about that, man. I apologize.
No, that's okay. No problem. You're probably running out of time too. So let me just get the story of your dog breeding, and then we can wrap it up. So if we have like maybe another 10 or 15 minutes just to wrap things up, how's that sound?
Yeah, that'll be fine. I'll make it short and quick. Like I said, I bought my first male in 2011. He aged about a year or so, saved up money and bought a female. And from there, like I said, my puppies went for about $1,500. So I would have 10, 9, 8, I would have pretty large litters, and I could make, 14, 15,000 at the time.
Wow. And I would imagine the overhead, the overhead is probably not that expensive either. So it wasn't bad because they were also pets, right?
And my son and his friends would play with them, and it was a good environment. I believe every child should have a pet if possible.
Sure.
So I just did it. I sold puppies. I got through graduate school. I got through my doctoral process, and now as of recent, I have been able to save money, and I spent about $20,000 on 3 dogs. Which the dogs that you see are pretty high end.
Yeah, they're beautiful animals. Beautiful.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. If you're going to do something, you do as well as you can, and you give it your best.
Oh, and it definitely shows. Those dogs, those photos of them dogs that it takes my breath away. The lines on those dogs, you can see the health. I see the health and the care that you're putting into it. It's obvious when I see these pictures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I feed them premium food. The overhead's a little higher, but see, at this level, the dogs that you've seen, their puppies are going to go for around $35,000 to $4,000.
Okay.
So you figure they have 10 dogs, you can make $35,000, $40,000. I got a male and 2 females, and I'm currently kind of doing like a layaway on a merle colored dog, the spotty patchy ones.
Yeah.
I posted pictures on my Facebook profile.
Yeah.
From the breeder, but I'm getting another girl. I have 1 male, 2 females, and I'm getting another girl. And those puppies will go for about $5,000.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That must give you such a good that must give you such a sense of accomplishment. I mean, the care that I get goosebumps if I take care of a cactus plant that my wife buys for me and I water it and here you are and you're caring for these dogs, and then they're having their litter, and then you care for those babies and you raise them up, and then you can hand them off to someone who is going to appreciate the beauty in that animal, and you have a hand in that. That must do something. That must do something to you to be involved in that.
It does, because I screen my buyers, and my buyers have been predominantly families.
Yeah.
From the suburbs, really nice environments.
So these dogs are going to a proper home. They're going to be taken care of.
Yes, I won't sell dogs to anybody that wants to fight them or anything crazy. I refuse sales in the past, and I will not put my dogs in bad situations. I do love my dogs. I love the breed, and I love my dogs. You know, and I always feel a connection with them, and it carries on after I sell them. And I try and maintain relationships with my buyers because they make great references.
Absolutely. Word of mouth, I would imagine, in that business, in the dog breeding business, has a lot to say with about your success.
Are you on my like page, my dog breeding page?
No, I don't think I am.
I'll send you a link to that also.
Do that. I'll also link that to this episode so everyone else can see it as well.
Okay, great. I'll get that to you. I mean, because that's another thing. There's a lot of scammers out there who may post a picture of someone else's dog and say, look, I got this dog looking for a great home, $2,000, and so forth. But, they rip people off, so they give responsible breeders a bad name.
Yeah, so how do you separate yourselves from those scammers? How can people know that you're the real deal? How can they know that your dogs are purebred?
I post pictures of my dogs throughout their life, multiple photos.
Yeah.
Every photo you see in my profile, I also put it on my like page.
Okay.
I post multiple pictures of every litter. I post pictures with families that I've sold dogs to. I asked all of my families that I sold dogs to if they could provide a reference for my dogs.
Okay.
So I try and you say, like, okay, if you go to my like page, you see a background photo.
Yeah.
And then the family in that picture, they're also a reference, but that was one of my hardest sales.
Okay.
Each sale is challenging, because people are afraid, people are cautious about their money.
Sure.
So I go out of my way to reassure them that their money is well spent.
Yeah.
And, it shows.
Is there some kind of national registry, some sort of national organization where you can register so that people know that you are the real deal and accredited? How does that work?
Right. There's the IOEBA, which is the International Organization of Old English Bulldogs.
Yeah.
International Organization of Old English Bulldogs. Yeah, that's it. But anyway, that's the organization. But my dogs going to be dual registered. They're going to be registered in multiple groups.
Okay.
So because they can also be registered in the AKBA, which is the European Bulldog Association, and you look for patterns. You look for different things.
Sure.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You look for patterns. You look for longevity. You look for a history, because I post, and you'll see on my like page, I post pictures of every litter I've had.
Okay. So then people can literally follow along on a timeline and see, what you're producing.
It provides a timeline of my activities.
And I tell you, it's and we see a lot of this over here in Norway, where my wife and I notice it, especially with Rottweilers. People have Rottweilers over here in Norway, and they look sick. They look almost, they look deficient. Weird head size, weird head sizes. The legs are weird. The proportions are just off. So I get the impression that they don't take their breeding very seriously over here. We also see a lot of German Shepherds that are just broken down with degenerative hip diseases and things like that. It's pretty sad to see. They don't seem to be taking the breeding seriously here. It's hard to find a bulldog, a British bulldog, that is going to look even close to the litters that you're having, based on the pictures that I've seen.
Really?
We just don't see that quality of dog over here in Norway. We don't.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? There's a lot of irresponsible breeders, puppy mills, and so forth. And I take pride in what I do.
Yeah.
Because you can have if you get a bad reputation in this business, word travels very fast.
Sure.
Especially with social media.
Sure. Yeah.
And before you know it, you're out of business. So I provide excellent customer service and quality. I'm trying to be innovative in terms of making customers happy and reassuring them that their purchase is respected, their money is respected, and they can trust me as a breeder.
Well, I definitely will do what I can to support what you're doing. When I post this episode, I'm going to make sure I have a few links and some good information to put out there. Let people kind of dive into that aspect of your life, and maybe they'll buy a dog from you someday.
That's fine. Or just talk to me or whatever. If they have any questions about the breed, they can, text me or whatever, because I'm not a pressed salesperson where I have to sell them to a person. I would rather make a person feel comfortable, and if they buy it from me, fine. If they buy it from someone else, fine.
Well, that's smart. That's a smart way of looking at it, because we're talking about a life here. This is a living, breathing animal, and you want it to go to the right person. Member. Yeah, you want it to go to the right the right family. Absolutely.
Right. Because these dogs live to be 10, 12 years, man. And that's a lifetime for these dogs. These dogs. And you want these dogs to be comfortable. You want the kids to be comfortable. These dogs are going to a family, and the kids are young, and then by the time it's not something to look forward to. But at the end of their lives, these kids are now adults. Yeah. So. Yeah. They provide companionship. They provide protection. They're kids. They're your family. They're family members.
Hey man, like I said,
I want to give people the best experience.
Yeah, and like I said, it must be so satisfying for you to be involved in that process. That just
It is.
Yeah. Like I said, I get happy if my wife buys me a plant and says, keep this thing alive, and I feel good about myself when I do that.
Oh, my God. John, you're crazy, man.
I'm crazy. I am. Hey, but speaking of my wife, she told me to make sure I tell you hello, and she's a fan. She also gets that feeling from you that you are the good man that you are. You seem to be the good man that you are.
You know what? She reached out to me like a sister from day one. You know, she really did, man. And that's I respect and admire her for that.
Yeah, well, she's usually, it was pretty unusual that she took a liking to you so easily, because and I don't want this to sound bad, but she is somewhat of a reserved person. She doesn't really, she's not that active on social media. She doesn't have a lot of friends, but the friends that she has, the people that she does let into her circle, it says something, because she doesn't do it that often. So I don't know. Congratulations, I guess.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I mean, when she's down there, like if I post something or ask you a question, she'll answer for me.
Well, yeah,
she'll make sure that I'm fully aware.
Yeah, I think what charmed her about you is that you ask genuine questions about Norway. She is definitely an advocate for Norway. She's quite the Norwegian patriot. Wow. So that you ask her questions and you took an interest in Norway. I think that's what did it. Yeah.
From the heart, from the heart, sincere questions,
Yeah.
And she's always answered my questions. She's always been like a sister, know.
Yeah.
And someone I respect.
Yeah.
And like I said, to both of you guys, man, I mean, if we ever move over there, I'm coming to see you, bro.
Oh, you have a place. You have a place over here, man. You are always welcome. You're always welcome on my podcast. I call you friend. I call you brother. And
definitely.
And
definitely.
We're going to continue. We're going to continue getting to know each other. We're going to continue sharing aspects of our life. You and I have so much in common. We touched on most of it here. Wow. There's so much more I want to talk to you about, but to be honest, I need to go because I have to go check on my kids. They're doing the homeschooling thing here because of Corona, and I haven't checked on them. I'm sure they're up, but I need to check on them, make sure they're not playing video games. They better be focusing on their schoolwork.
How old are your kids? How old are they?
Our daughter is 15. Our son will be 13 in just a few days. December 7th.
Good to get on them, brother.
So they're at that age. Thank you. So they're at that age where they are, they're kind of proving to my wife and I that we've done the right thing, because this is the age where they start to become more independent, and with that independence comes new challenges, and they seem to be handling things pretty well. So I got to pat myself and Snoopy on the back. We're good parents. So
that's a blessing, brother.
Yeah, it is.
You guys have done a great job.
Yeah, we
and
are.
With that, I got to take my dogs outside.
Yeah, and you need some sleep. It's like 2 a.m. there.
I'm exhausted, brother. That's almost 3. If you ever want to do a part 2 podcast,
I do.
Let me know.
I do, for sure. For sure.
And I'd be more than happy to do that. And I'm going to send you the links to my doctoral study and my like page for my dogs.
Yeah, do that. I'll share that with my listeners. I know they'll be interested. I know they've gotten a little lift in their life from this conversation that I've had with you, Les. So thank you so much for doing this.
God bless you and your listeners.
Bless you as well.
One love, brother, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Take care of yourself, Les. Okay. Thank you and goodbye.